Should you cruise or should you cancel? That's the question on everybody's mind, and that's the topic of today's episode of the Lido Loca Cruise Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name's Tony. I'm glad to have you here. If you enjoy daily cruising content, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of the episodes. Well, if you're somebody that is connected to that cruise life, if you are someone who likes to cruise, or maybe if you are even a new cruiser, the question that is being bandied around for the last few weeks and even more so today, should you cruise or should you cancel? It's an interesting question with a lot of answers, and the answers vary by the person that you are talking to. What I have done is I've developed a little bit of a matrix for your thoughts, a thought matrix, as it were, a framework where you can think about this issue and come to some sort of determination for yourself. And I do have an announcement about the cruise that we have scheduled at the end of the week on the NCL breakaway. So first, the thought matrix. There's a lot of conditions, there's a lot of things that go into determining whether it's time to cancel or time to cruise. First, let's talk about some of the outcomes that could happen when you go cruising right now. The first outcome and the best outcome would be that you go cruising and you come back from cruising and have a wonderful vacation without any impact. That is the goal. Now, as we slide down, something else to think about is a very real possibility if you go cruising right now is that you will be inconvenienced or delayed in some fashion. There are news stories abound of cruise ships that are taking longer to disembark and to embark because of the current situation. There are stories abound of cruise ships being denied entry into various cruise ports, therefore disrupting the cruise vacation. So if you go on a cruise right now, again, there could be the possibility of disruption. That's something that you need to think about as you're trying to answer the question. Number 3 is a more severe possibility that you might not be able to leave the cruise ship for a period of time. There's only a few examples of this, but they do exist. There are cruise ships that are unable to return home on their scheduled time, and passengers having to stay on cruise ships longer than they ever intended. It's something you have to consider. If your 7-day cruise suddenly becomes a 21-day cruise with very limited ability to move around the cruise ship, very limited ability to partake in that cruise life, is that something that you are going to be able to deal with in that scenario? And then finally, of course, the worst thing would be if you went on a cruise ship and you became unhealthy. This is the biggest risk, and this is one that you have to determine yourself whether it's a risk that you're willing to take. So inside that framework, are you still willing to cruise? Now, there are some people groups that are more at risk than others. People that are older, people in their 70s, 80s, people that have poor immune systems, people that have respiratory issues anyways. This might not be the time to go cruising. What I would advocate is that if you do want to go on a cruise, I would consult with your physician before you go and see what they say. They're more in tune with your health than all the commentators and all the people like me out there. And so if you are planning on cruising, I would reach out to your physician and ask what they think about the issue. But the rest of it really is kind of up to you. Can you handle all of the things that might be coming your way if you make the choice to go cruising? And there's two schools of thought on that, right? You got to live your life. You can't fret too much. Things can happen to you at home the same way they can happen to you on a cruise ship. And so if anything's going to happen to you, maybe it's better to happen on a cruise ship. I've heard that attitude out there, and I think that is a very valid approach. And then I've heard people that say, I just don't feel comfortable. I don't want to live inside of those conditions that I outlined earlier, and I would just rather stay home. Fortunately, one of the determinations of whether or not to cancel or to cruise was previously a financial consideration. The thought of losing a lot of money is definitely a motivator where people would decide to go ahead and continue with their vacation even though they didn't feel comfortable about it. What's fortunate is almost all of the cruise lines have come up with a modified cancellation policy that will allow you to cancel your cruise, rebook a cruise, reschedule the cruise without much financial loss. I got to applaud the industry. Obviously, it's not in their best interest to lose a lot of money, but they are looking out for the safety of people And I think that that is great, and I applaud them for that. It's got to be a challenge when you are a business that are employing thousands of people, trying to make sure that company stays afloat, no pun intended, to make these decisions. And of course, you have to make the right decision. You have to err on the side of health, and you don't want people making decisions purely from a financial perspective, because they could possibly make poor decisions because they feel this worry about losing the money that they've spent. So at least the cruise lines, the majority of them are developing policies that will allow people to not lose their money if they do decide to cancel their cruise. So what's my opinion on the thing? Again, I think people have to make their own choice. I'm not too worried about cruising, but some of those things inside those 4 conditions, I'm not that excited about. I don't like the delays. It took us a little longer to get on the MSC Divina than it had previously on other cruises. There was extra health screening, there was thermal scanning, all of those things important and necessary, but I didn't necessarily love it. And another thing I'm dealing with is I'm not feeling that great physically. On the MSC Divina, that was the heaviest I've ever cruised. And I tell you what, I struggled a little bit just to live that cruise life for a week. Walking around was a little bit of a challenge. Walking around the film was a little bit of a challenge. And while I had a great time being with Jenny and Don, it wasn't my favorite cruise experience from the way I felt from a fitness perspective. I pushed through it. I did the things that I had to do because I wanted to enjoy the cruise. But every night when I laid my head on the pillow, I was like, man, I've got to do something about this because I'm not enjoying this cruise as much because I am heavy. And in addition to the fitness, we had a little bit of trouble working on the cruise ship. Now, Jenny has a lot of people during this time that are concerned about their cruises, rightfully so. And so she's been working with them to rebook and to take advantage of some of the policies that the cruise lines have. And I tell you what, the week that we were on the MSC Divina, she had a hard time doing that work. So we've got a little bit of concern for work. We've got a lot of concern for our fitness. And we did have a concern for the money. But now, starting on Tuesday, NCL has released a new cancellation policy, which will allow people booked on NCL to take the money that they were going to spend on a cruise that was happening in the near future and apply that money to a different NCL cruise further out in the future. And we've got more than one NCL cruise booked. And so when we heard that news, it was kind of a no-brainer. Let's stay home, let's work, let's help people through this time, let's work on our fitness, and let's kind of get ready to cruise again. That was the decision that we made. I wouldn't dissuade anybody from cruising, but you do have to determine whether or not the time is right for you to cruise and whether there are any other extenuating circumstances that would make you not want to cruise, and whether or not you're willing to take the risks that I've outlined in this video. And look, it's a hard deal. Our whole lives are built around cruising. I don't want people not to cruise, but I don't want people to not be safe either. And it's still up in the air which one of those things is the most best. And so again, my advice from this video is you have to determine what's the most best for you and go from there. Man, I can't wait till this is over and this gets back to normal. I hope that happens soon. But until now, it seems like it's the thing that we will keep talking about. Let me tell you, the big challenge I find with some of this conversation is it's so heated and rhetoric and repeatable talking points and sound bites, those kind of things. Look, at the end of the day, we're people trying to make a decision what to do for ourselves, and do your fellow human being a favor and cut them some slack. If you don't agree with what they're saying, don't take the opportunity to berate them. Just realize they're trying to figure it out and maybe offer information that's helpful. I've seen way too much name calling and degrading of people and spewing of talking points during all of this conversation, and it's disheartening. But we can do better. That's what I think. All right. What do you think? Are you going to keep cruising? Are you going to cancel? I've seen a lot of people that are doing both, and I think both are valid as long as you know the risk and you are okay with it. Take care of yourselves out there. Let's keep living that cruise life. And until the next episode, I'll see you on the Lido. Bye.